Electrive Studio, powered by EVBox. Hi there, welcome to the Electrive Studio at the Revolution event in Amsterdam. We are here for EVBox, and on our couch, or actually just behind me, is Sandra Roling. She is with the Climate Group, a not-for-profit organization that also leads on the EV100 initiative. And Sandra is actually responsible to help form this coalition. Sandra, I'm very happy to see you here. So maybe give us a brief introduction where this EV100 coalition is at the moment.
Great, thanks a lot for inviting me, first of all. Very excited to be here today. So we put EV100 together to build a platform of companies saying we believe in electromobility, we are going to make the transition now, and to set the aim to make this transition by 2030. So it's very much about inviting big international companies with large fleets, sort of 10,000, 30,000 vehicle fleets, to basically show that electromobility is really ready now and that companies believe in it, and to tell the automotive sector also that there is growing demand. It's very exciting that we have 35 members so far, so big international names, Deutsche Post, DHL, Ikea, or what is now called Ikea Group, Vattenfall, E.ON, HP, Bank of America, State Bank of India. So we're very excited to have very different sectors involved, from postal, delivery, retailers, leasing companies, to also a really broad geographic range. So we have members from almost all around the world, which is obviously quite exciting to demonstrate how fast electromobility is moving into mainstream around the world.
Definitely, but listening to you now, so you mentioned that you have really, you're talking to pretty much large corporations. Is there a chance for smaller, like SMEs, for example, or the German Mittelstand, say, to join as well, or are you really kind of concentrating on the demonstration?
So we are focusing more on international companies because we're set up as a global initiative as well, and we want to, by inviting some of the biggest players, really send a market signal to show that some of the early demand is building very rapidly. But in terms of the knowledge that is generated, how you go about it, the business case, I think those are all things that apply to small and medium enterprises as well. And of course, we're very happy for them to be part of that knowledge sharing, for example. And we see a lot of companies following in the same footsteps, but maybe some of the big international brand names are the ones that can really raise the attention internationally and show how far this demand is, or this topic of electromobility is already moving ahead in the business community as well.
And actually, you just mentioned demand. It is quite crucial in a way, or curious, that actually the users are driving manufacturers or driving this demand. We saw this with DHL that in the end built their own vehicles. So what is the demand like? Like, what can you see from what kind of electric vehicles are needed at the moment in these bigger companies?
So, I mean, we're looking at vehicles up to 7.5 tons overall. We're knowing that personal vehicles and vans, obviously, the segment where there's already a really strong business case. But we have companies also looking at some of the larger vehicles, so it's really quite a broad range. I think in terms of why companies are doing it, it's really a number of different things. There's a lot of around future-proofing. So lots of companies understand that we need to act on climate change. They know that air pollution is a growing issue, that cities are starting to regulate to restrict access to city centers, and they want to be ready for that. The other bit is consumers care, staff care, customers care about the credibility in environmental terms that their brands have. So I think in that sense, for example, putting charging infrastructure at workplaces or at retail spaces is something that's demonstrated in a very tangible way that the company wants to be credible on climate change. And I think the last bit is the cost savings aspect. We know that upfront cost is still more expensive now, but there are huge operational savings to be made. And Bloomberg New Energy Finance, for example, think that by 2024 we will reach full cost parity. So already on the way there, depending on how you use your vehicle, if you have a very high usage rate, you can already make cost savings. So Deutsche Post, DHL, to name just one of our members, they tell us that their electric postal vans save them about 60 to 70% on fuel and 60 to 80% on maintenance and repair. So that's obviously quite an important incentive that I think will be growing over time as well.
Yeah, you just mentioned basically data and transferability, but also transparency. Do you have any way of proving these pledges, or do companies need to report their advances? How does this work?
Yes, exactly. So the companies make a public commitment. They are acknowledged for having made the commitment on the website, etc. And then once a year, we have a reporting cycle where we ask companies, what is the makeup of their fleet, how much of it has already been electrified, what are their plans for the coming years, and that is sort of part of the public accountability mechanism. So companies know that once a year they will be asked what progress they have made, and it's of course also a great opportunity for us to tell about the impact that collectively the initiative is making.
And you, as leading on the EV100 for the Climate Group, do you approach companies directly?
Yes, we have lots of bilateral conversations with companies. We like to be present at events like today as well, to let people know that this initiative exists and put a bit of a challenge to them to come and join us. And then usually it's a process over a few months to have that conversation inside the company, make a decision to take this type of public commitment. And that's sort of usually a process that we work through with the companies individually.
I think the current pledge is at 2 million by 2025, is that correct?
So that's the total of the vehicles that are affected by the 23 members that we had by September last year. So that was a year after the start of the initiative, and that's why we had our reporting cycle. So by then we had 23 members who were part of EV100 at the time, told us about the vehicles that they have in their fleets. So directly in the operations there was 145,000. Then there were companies like LeasePlan who, in addition to that, made a commitment to bring their customers along as well. So they have 1.8 million vehicles under management. And since then, we've already seen more companies joining. So there were another 70,000 vehicles that we flagged in the report by the companies who had joined last. And obviously that group keeps growing and growing. Just a few weeks ago, we had 2 big postal companies join us with another few thousand vehicles each. So that's really the impact that we want to build and keep building over time.
And if you personally could have a vision, where do you think this going? What do you think is possible for this initiative to reach?
So we would love lots more companies to join. I think the trajectory is very promising, and I think particularly interesting is that we see in certain sectors, for example, everything that is an urban last mile delivery fleet or service fleet, etc. There's a really strong business case already evolving. So we think, if you have a few companies from a similar sector already joining, usually you get the rest of the sector interested as well. So we really see a big opportunity for quite a lot of companies to join us. And of course, the more companies join, the easier it is also to have an impact on market conditions, to talk to your automotive sector, and overall to really help move the sector forward and just make it a new normal by 2030 or maybe even before then.
So the interest is there. Are there enough electric vehicles to be delivered?
We definitely need more, and it's part of the idea that by setting a forward-looking target and saying we want these vehicles by 2030, that an initiative like EV100 can make it much more visible how much demand is already out there. So I think a lot of car manufacturers have clearly announced the production of more vehicles. I think by 2022 it's supposed to be around 300, but of course the question is how many of these will be put on the market, where will they be put onto the market geographically, and that's where we want to make a contribution and tell the automotive manufacturers to be more ambitious and basically to tell them the demand is already there. If you produce the vehicles, there will be companies and hopefully lots of individuals over time as well to buy them.
Wonderful final words. The demand is there. We see the same here at the EVBox Revolution event in Amsterdam. This was Sandra Roling in the electrive.com studio. Thank you very much for listening and talking to us. Electrive Studio, powered by EVBox.